Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's afternoon session, Open Source and Social Innovation. So if you look at it, what I have done is I strike through the source, okay? So there may be confusion to all of you, or there may be questions to you. The session talks as open source and social innovation, but however, the source is strike through. Just hold on to that question, why it has been exclusively strike through, because I just wanted to create a curiosity, because there is also a message I want to pass on, okay? And as I go through the slides, you will come to know what is the intent of I'm trying to communicate, that how open source and some other extra things can really accelerate the social innovation, okay? So today's agenda, what I want to cover is basically, I want to talk about what is social innovation, and then also talk about which are the global social innovation projects which are highly successful, okay? And also talk about why they are successful and what principles they have adopted it, okay? So those are, so I want to abstract, because I want to analyze their success based on those principles, okay? And then talk about which are the social innovation project which is successful in India, a story backed by data. And now, as you are all hearing that there's a lot of transformation happening on healthcare because of COVID-19, and government of India is trying to do it. I also connect back to, in today's world, what's happening in India on healthcare ecosystem and what are the social innovation opportunities in healthcare, okay? So that's the way I wanted to make it happen. So before I start, just I want a quick introduction about me. Yeah, I've been in the industry for more than 20 years. I work at Dell Technologies as a director of software engineering. I lead the social innovation team, okay? Right now we are working with Government of India on a pro bono for non-communicable disease. Basically my passionate is basically, I'm very passionate about technology for transforming human lives, okay? So that's my background. You could find more background in the LinkedIn profile. So I mean, that's all it is. So moving on. So let's try to understand what is social innovation, okay? So there are many definitions for social innovation, but I like Francis Wesley's definition. So what the definition talks about, it basically says it's an initiative. It could be product, it could be process, or it could be a set of standard operating procedures that profoundly changes beliefs. It means it challenges conventional thinking, okay? So traditionally you are doing something in a different way, but it's a new way of doing it, okay? That's what it's trying to do. And it also talks about greater resilience and durability and impact and scale. See, the social innovations, unless until there is an impact and scale, it never gets noticed. There may be multiple innovation happening in the world. End of the day, any technology what we develop, it should always benefit society. So when it benefits society, that's called as social innovation. And so one of the definition is basically it should change convention, it should challenge conventional thinking, it should be durable, it should have an impact, and should have a scale and resilience. Okay, so that's what is social innovation. Can you imagine what are some of the social innovation platforms which has been highly successful and we use every day? Today, right now, we are using one of the social innovation platform. You all are watching this video right now on one of the social innovation platform. What it could be? YouTube. Okay. So if you look at it, these are the social innovations, technology social innovation built on platforms. Okay. See, YouTube, when it was built, they built a platform basically thinking that it's a video sharing platform. But today it's used as a live streaming platform. So what's the key message? And if you look at it, Facebook, when they built it, they thought it was just a messaging. Someone can share info content. The focus was only on sharing the content. WhatsApp, it was built as a messaging platform, but now today it's being used as a support system. And lot of customer service support is happening through chatbot, through WhatsApp. So the key message is lot of why they are successful. If you look at it, Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, or take anything. Why they are so successful, highly successful? Because they went with an open platform. Are they open source? No. They are not open source project. They are only the open platforms. So what I want to emphasize here is that Open platform, basically when I say platform means it's an architecture, the design thinking. If it is there, that also can lead to social innovation. So this is a classic example that I'm saying that there are two. Basically, I'm trying to say that you can open source your architecture and design, which is nothing but your platform. Okay, that also can lead to a social innovation. Okay. Now let's look at some of the interesting aspects. Okay, there is open source, there is open platforms. If you look at Linux and Android, these are the two fantastic operating systems which are open source. The code base is available, anyone can create a new distribution, okay, distro. But whereas Windows is not open source, it's an open platform. Okay, it's open source platform. Basically, the code is not available, but the architecture, design, everything is available. And on top of Windows, a lot of applications are being built. I mean, it could be Word, Office is their application, but there are so many applications on Windows platform has been built. Okay, take an example of in the infrastructure side, OpenStack. Okay, it's a cloud computing platform. It's completely open source. Docker, completely open source. But VMware virtualization also is a platform, but it is not a open source. It is an open platform which has a robust architecture and design principle built on virtualization technology, and it's creating an ecosystem to build on top of value-added services. Okay, if you take about in terms of database, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, again it's an open source project, but Oracle database itself is a open platform. Similarly, if you go to messaging platforms, Apache Kafka is more of an open source code base with a solutions and architecture design. But if you go back to IBM WebSphere message broker, itself is an open platform. Eclipse is a standard IDE. Okay, it's an open source. But Visual Studio is from Microsoft. Again, it's an open platform. So the key message, what I wanted to communicate is that open source and open platform both can exist, and which can lead to social innovation. And I also took a look at GitHub is one of the most contributing open source project. When I look at it, Microsoft VS Code. VS Code is nothing but a Visual Studio Code, which is an IDE for Microsoft. That's one of the most popular contributors are there. Okay, Azure Docs. Okay, Kubernetes. So these are just an example which I'm trying to say that there are a lot of open source projects which are highly successful, which are also leading to social innovation, but there are open platforms which are also highly successful, leading to open social innovation. Okay, moving on. So now let's come back to the social. So now if you look, what we did, let's recap it. We looked at social innovation. What is social innovation? We looked at the global open platform-led social innovations. We also looked at it, open platform and open source led social innovations. Okay. Now, the common among all these things, either it could be platform-led social innovation or open source-led social innovation. Because Android, if you look at it, it's completely open source, but it has built such a ecosystem. They not only do the open source, they also follow the open platform thinking process. So the key ingredient to make a social innovation successful is, okay, you should have an open platform. What is the open platform? Okay, the open platform is nothing but the approach of how you design and architect. Okay, so the first fundamental principles of any architecture is you should always go with a layered approach. Okay, so what do you mean by layered approach? Okay, so before you start architecting any problems, okay, you need to realize the fact that the system is complex. The first thing is what you should understand is what you're trying to solve is always complex, because the reason you start thinking on that line, what will happen is you start unbundling the problem. Traditionally, we have been taught in such a way that whenever the problem is given, we should solve problem end to end. Okay, but if you try to solve problem end to end, then what it leads to is basically you become a completely closed loop system. Okay, closed system. So you try to unbundle, and finally find out the lowest possible problem. Okay, and then how that should be solved. Okay, that's what we call it a microservice. Okay, so you should always unbundle in such a way that go back to the lowest possible thing, and then once you find the lowest problem, also think: is this a problem? Should I solve it, or should someone else solve it? someone means the subsystem or the ecosystem can solve it. If they can solve it, then what you should do as part of platform to enable them to solve it. So that one thing is, so unbundling and then solving the core problem is very important rather than solving the complete problem is important. That's what they did it. WhatsApp only solved the messaging. They never thought of the use cases, how it will be getting used. Facebook only solved the content sharing, but today it's acting like a new channel. So the use cases, the solution varies with the time. As the technology matures, as the ecosystem matures, innovations will find a new ways of utilizing the platform and trying to solve the problem rather than the platform should not try to think for the, and platform you can visualize the use cases, but solve only the core problem. So that is one key message. Okay. Second thing is open API. When I say open API means what? Whenever you try to build any system, you always try to define a first interface. And remember, whenever you're trying to solve any problem, you will only solve only the interface. So make sure that as the first step, whenever you're trying to solve any problem, mainly if we are looking from social innovation perspective, publish your APIs. The moment you publish your APIs and you get the feedback, so that's where you bind your contract of the system. And the implementation can keep changing. So basically you can evolve for replaceability, where design should be in such a way that it can evolve for replaceability. So that's what we call open API. And another thing, what is very important in the social innovation aspects is provide a sandbox. The moment you provide a sandbox, the ecosystem will definitely try to use those APIs and test those APIs and give the feedback, and then the loop starts. Okay, so that's very important, saying that you need to have an open API with a sandbox. The other important thing is, like, whenever you are trying to build a platform, you should always look at, is it scalable? The scalability by design should be part of your fundamental principle. Is it really scalable? Can it scale 100 users? Can it scale 1,000 users? So that's the other thing one needs to look into it. The next one is, whatever you build a platform, okay, is it failure resiliency? So what do you mean by failure resiliency? The failure resiliency is nothing but, see, when you build any software, any microservice, okay, anything can go wrong. So just take a simple example, the network communication can go wrong, the storage may crash, the machine may crash. So whenever those crash happens, what is the behavior of the system and how quickly the system can recover? These are the fundamental principles one needs to think as part of open platform architecture. If they has not been thought through, okay, then it is impossible to scale. So the key other two ingredients are basically failure resiliency and the scalability by design should be considered. The next comes is data privacy policy. As you are expecting, you are visualizing this as a social visual innovation, okay, then a lot of data movement will happen. So as the first step, define the privacy policy. See, nothing is perfect on the first step. Okay, it will evolve. So what you are supposed to do is simple. Define what it is there, keep it for open public, let them review, and it will evolve. So that's the only way in terms of social innovation, the data privacy policy. If you look at Facebook today, again, they're reviving their privacy policy, because how this should not influence bad things, because Facebook really created a awesome content sharing, but it also is impacting other things like election results. It's manipulating it. Sometimes it's increasing the violence. Okay. So for example, in Bangalore incident, one of the person posted something and it created huge violence. So now Facebook is trying to come back with a privacy policy, saying that content policy, saying that anything which is objectionable, they are going to delete it. So the policy will evolve, but the key thing is define it, publish it, get a feedback and review it. And lastly, open source your code. In the sense, once you do this platform thinking, API, sandbox, data privacy, then open source your code. So then basically by doing open sourcing, you are expecting other contributors, developers also to contribute to the platform. So that is another thing, because the more people look at your code, your platform becomes robust and more secure, and also it can adapt to the future needs. Lastly, the key message is focus on solving the core problem rather than leave the use cases for ecosystem to innovate and build them, let them build a solution rather than platform building the complete end-to-end solutions. Okay. So let me spend some time on, we talked about open platform. Okay. So I would like to spend time on, when you say open platform, I'll take a concrete examples. Okay. How the platform, the architecture layer is going to solve the problems. So if you look at it, everyone knows TCP/IP. Yes, everyone knows internet exists. I mean, everyone knows GPS. Okay, global positioning system. This was all innovated basically by government-funded projects. Okay, like TCP/IP was invented in the U.S. military. Okay, GPS was invented again. So, but when GPS was invented, no one thought of all the possible solutions how it's going to disrupt the market. Okay. So on top of GPS, Google came back saying that it'll collect all the GPS locations, it'll create a map. The Google Maps came up with something called as Maps. Now the moment map came back, so new kind of services started happening. Within that particular zone, how many can I find a restaurant? Can I find a XYZ, whatever what I wanted? So if you look at it, it's a layered architecture. So GPS is a foundational digital infrastructure which was built. On top of that, maps came. So now, when the smartphone came up, we did a technology leapfrog from telephone line to smartphone. Smartphone is one of the key features of smartphone is it's leveraging the location, okay, the GPS location. So now, because the smartphones are leveraging GPS location, there are much more value-added use cases are coming. You do see a lot of push notifications on the smartphone. We want access to a location. Why? Because based on the location, new value-added services, they can push it based on your choices. They can push the content saying that, are you interested? So again, there's a new kind of innovation is coming. Now, once the smartphones are more popular, now new again innovations are coming. For example, soft credit card. You don't need to have a physical credit card. For example, another example is Apple Pay. Of course, everyone knows it. In India, for example, Titan Watch, they introduced a cashless payment. Okay, basically using a watch, you can make a payment. And that's again innovation. So it's always like the innovation happens, social innovation happens on a multi-layered architecture. So that's one of the reasons what the core message is: solve the core problem. Do not try to solve the bigger problem. Try to solve the core problem and solve it thoroughly. Okay, so that's the key message. As part of open architecture, just I wanted to communicate with an example. So let's look at some of the social innovation open source projects in India. Okay. So we talked about YouTube, GPS, Google Maps. These are all global. Okay. I wanted to come back to Indian context saying that what are the projects which are highly successful in India in terms of open platform, in terms of open source also. Okay. So, and which has led to social innovation. Okay. And there are many open source projects. Okay. Yeah, I do agree that, but end of the day, any open source project will lead to social innovation, but the impact should be very high. Okay. So that's where I'm coming back to the social innovation aspect. And these are the three which I have done. I have listed it, but there could be more. Okay. I've taken a conscious choice to took 3 examples and do a deep dive of one, basically the open platform. The other 2 are open source. Like I'll cover it up. I'll give a more overview on this. If you look at India Stack, it's a completely what they have done. It's in the financial technology space. They have published a list of APIs which enables the ecosystem to solve hard problems: paperless, cashless, and service delivery. Okay. In the further slide, I'll talk about how it has transformed India in terms of businesses. Sunbird is again an open source project which is there in the GitHub. Okay, it's done for Ministry of Education, Department of Education. What they built is they built a digital infrastructure for knowledge sharing. Okay, so what they have transformed is, so what they have done is basically they have transformed the way the education is getting delivered. If you go back to the school kids book or 4th standard, 5th standard, on each chapter they have put a QR code. Okay, if you install a Diksha app and if you scan that QR code, if the students need any videos, basically if they need a help, they don't understand the chapter, there's a videos are uploaded in the platform and the videos will explain to the students about that chapter fundamentals. So this is again a new social innovation. It's a completely open source project built with open platform principles and is really transformed the way the education. I mean, it's definitely mainly in case of rural. Imagine in the rural sector, there may not be a good quality teachers. So how do you ensure that you provide a quality of education to rural students, even though the teachers may not be able to communicate? So then you need a digital infrastructure. Now, how do you send that digital messages, for example, for that chapter? So that's the way they have done it through QR code. Digit is another good example of open source solutions, which is done by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. It's basically a public good for urban citizen-centric governance. So today, for example, in any house, there are three typical bills are coming. You use, for example, if you have a gas, okay, cooking gas, you have a power, you have a water, okay. So now there are three separate bills comes up. So what this digit is trying to do is, it is basically making it as only one bill. So if you have only one bill, how it's easy? I mean, it's super easy. So it is being rolled out in many urban cities. And again, it's an open source project. They are working with various Ministry of Urban Department in various states and rolling it out. So these are the two classic example of open source innovations, which is transforming the society, which is benefiting the society. So in terms of India Stack, I'll take a next slide is going to do a deep dive on how India Stack is transforming the financial industry. So what is, as you know, we have 1.2 billion Aadhaars. Okay. So what they did is they built an open architecture fundamental principles and they expose API for each layer. Okay. So for biometric authentication, Aadhaar expose what? APIs. Okay. Basically presenceless layer. How this has benefited? If you look at it, Geo, okay, they entered recently, but they captured market share very well because of various pricing. Leave the pricing part. How they are able to onboard 300 million customer base in the shortest span. Even Facebook could not do that. Why? Because what they use the leverage of Aadhaar technology. Typically in previous way, for example, before Aadhaar, how we used to get it to your if you want to get a connection, you need to give any proof of identity. They will take a photocopy. It has to go back office. Someone has to validate it manually and then say that, hey, this is the right thing. But here, since the open API is there, the platform is there, Jio was able to scale it. They opened so many locations and anyone can type their biometric and get authenticated, and then the customer is a valid customer. It's validated whether the customer who is taking the SIM card, is it the real person or not? It got validated. So they leverage the presenceless layer technology very well to make sure that the SIM card is delivered to the right person. That number one. Paperless. I was recently 2 years back, I was looking at, I applied for a home loan. The IDFC Bank came back and said that they don't want any documents. They came and they took a photocopies and they uploaded it. So it's basically a completely paperless transactions, paperless layer. So where they took just a copies and then they uploaded to the lockers. Okay. And that made, so it basically, there's another way of doing a paperless transaction. Today, we are using cashless layer very, very well. UPI. Wherever you go to any shops, they have put a QR code and we use that QR code to transfer even 5 rupees, 10 rupees. Whenever I need to pay money to any of my friends now, in the traditional way we used to do, ask them bank account number, ISFC code and all those things. Now it's just a mobile number. It just transfer. The UPI has really transformed the cashless layer. How do you exchange cashes? Consent is getting, they have only defined the specification, but right now, due to health, it's getting more traction. It's going to get implemented. Consent layer is also implemented in the financial transactions also already, but in the health, it's getting more, I would say, strengthened. Okay, so this is the way the layered architecture of India Stack is a classic example how Open API has led to the social innovation. So if you look, I want to do a quick deep dive on UPI. Pick up this UPI example, what has happened. If you look at unified UPI means unified payment interface. What are the actors? Okay, payer means like either I'm paying or someone else is paying, and payment system provider means that bank. Okay, I'm paying from my bank account. Payee means the receiver. So both can be different bank accounts. That's the crux of the problem. NPCI is the one who owns and defines the unified interface. And on top of that, each bank started publishing the UPI apps. If you look at it, And in 2016, this UPI came, and suddenly each bank was publishing their own UPI app. Today, there may be 50 or 100 banks or 500 banks, whatever it is. They have published their UPI apps, but no one is using their UPI apps. Because why? There's something called a third-party application provider. Again, it's a layered architecture. Okay, banks may have their own UPI apps, but what this the NPCI did is they allowed something called as TPAP, means third-party application provider. So the third-party application provider is one who can also do a payment service, but they are not a bank. They can get affiliated to bank, that they're like a broker of a bank, but they can ensure that they can provide a value-added service. So let's take an example. If you look at it, I mean, I took it from NPCI website. You may be thinking Amazon Pay, they are not a bank. They are backed by a bank, the Axis Bank, but they are a third-party application provider. Because again, it's a layered architecture. Basically, there's a unified open API called UPI, and the banks is a payment system provider. Then there is a service provider called a third-party application provider who can provide a value-added services. If you make a payment to Amazon Pay, you get vouchers. Okay, that is the new innovation. Okay, there's a new social innovation. Amazon is trying to give that value-added services. They are holding the market. They are trying to hold the market share of the UPI user base and trying to create something out of that based on the user base, based on your transaction. They are trying to integrate other interested merchants and offer you a value-added services. So if you look at how is innovation happening, like CoinTab, okay, it's a simple app for managing multiple bank accounts. Okay, Cred, it's basically rewards for credit card payment. Okay, and MyFastag. See, if you typically in the car you have for toll collection. Okay, what is the MyFastag is? They also would open their own UPI. So instead of you transferring to the bank into their bank account, some MyFastag with some subject line, you can create your own UPI handle from the MyFastag, and then you can transfer the money. So a new set of innovation is happening because third-party application provider service got opened up. Let's imagine if the TPAP was not there, then you learn there's no innovation. Then the market. So that's where. So if you want to innovate socially, social innovation should happen. Means what needs to happen is you need to define the layered architecture, and TPAP is one of the classic example how UPI really took up the scale. This is the UPI growth. If you look at it, 2016, the Q2 was launched, and I took PhonePe as one example. They are one of the first one who launched it. They have a market share of 26%. Google Pay, who came little later, but they have a market share of 50%. Paytm, they were the first wallet company, but if in the UPI business space, they have only 7% market share based on, I read it again, it could approximate. And Amazon Pay, they launched recently, but still they're getting the market share. Combining of these four itself only is close to 80%. So what the key message is, let's see if these two were, if the TPAP, the third party application provider was not introduced, then the UPI would not have grown so much. And we could not have seen such a drastic social innovation of how you do a cashless payment. So that's the one thing just I wanted to call out here. Now, I want to cover this because what I wanted to show is that how in India also the social innovation is happening using open API approach also. Now, why I wanted to talk about healthcare. See, due to COVID-19, now healthcare has become preventive and primary healthcare has become much more important. And in today's world, what is happening is our India healthcare system is completely not digitized. Even when we talk about US, which is very advanced in healthcare, okay, there also healthcare interoperability doesn't exist. So in India, we have a chance to leapfrog, okay, no digitization to interoperability. Okay, so Government of India has launched something called as National Digital Health Mission. What they're trying to do is they're trying to create some kind of a unified interface, like in UPI, similar interface for healthcare. So I want to just list down the actors. Okay, like in the UPI, there are actors are there. One is beneficiary, of course, who is taking the services. The other one comes is like lab, hospital, clinic. Right now, there are lab, hospital, clinic are there, but there is no facility registry. No one knows that how many clinics exist, how many hospitals are exist, how many labs are exist, and what services they provide. So they are trying to create something called a health facility registry, which will provide which will maintain the database and which will ensure that the services, whatever the services they are offered, is maintained in a digital repository. Next comes is Like UPI handle, in the UPI handle, what happens? Your mobile number at bank name is typically, or the third party application provider name is your handle. Similarly, they are trying to provide health ID. The moment health ID is done, then health records can be linked. Let's say today, for example, when you walk into any small doctor or a clinic or something, they recommend a lab test. Now they don't have facility for, but then you, as a beneficiary or as a patient or as citizen, what do? You go and conduct lab tests outside. But what happens? You need to get those printouts and send it back to doctor. Go and physically meet it. Now that thing can change. Instead of that, you can go to anywhere and make sure that the record is accessible to the doctor. Doctor can look at based on your consent. So that one of the reasons there's something called consent manager is coming. The moment you digitize health record, and if you want to allow someone to allow that happen, a consent manager will come into picture. I'll show you in the further slide how this consent manager in gateway is going to ensure that based on the user consent only, that data can be access can be provided. Similarly, something called as health information user. Okay, so basically an entity which would like to access health record. For example, you are in one hospital, okay, and let's say you move back to other hospital, other clinic, and that doctor wants to get the information based on your consent. So sometimes hospital becomes a health information provider. Sometimes the hospital or clinic becomes a health information user. So typically the hospitals have a health management system or a lab records or systems, but what will happen is they may not be compliant to the standards published by NDHM, National Digital Health Mission. So then they need to become a health information provider. Now that's what is the new game. So now they may have their own system, but they need to be compliant in such a way that they can become a HIP. Right now, even today, for example, there are a lot of private players exist like doctor repository. Again, only the limited people are there. What the government is trying to do is they're trying to prepare a healthcare professional repository, kind of doctors, ANM, ASHAs, and everything. Lastly, the interesting thing is because of this health ID and because of the consent manager, there can be something called a federated personal health record. So through single pane of glass, if your health records at various facilities are linked using health ID, you can get a unified view of the federated health record. The another new kind of service is going to come is basically this small clinic, okay, facilities. Right now, they may be maintaining the data in their own Excel or some format. Now, because of the standards compliance, there could be new kind of service, new kind of a software vendor possible called health repository provider. They may say that you don't need to store in the clinic, your local hard disk, store it in the cloud. Okay. So I'll become a health repository provider. Not only it can be for user or it can be for labs or clinic or hospitals. The another thing is coming is something called EMR, basically a digital version of patient treatment history in a single facility. So if you look at it, what is happening is sometimes the hospital will become a user, sometimes the clinic will become a provider. So if you are sharing information, you are a provider, health information provider. If you are asking for information based on the patient consent, let's assume that a person walks into hospital 4. Okay, initially he visited hospital 1, he had done some test, now he's moved on to a different city, and that person walks back to hospital 4, and the doctor asks for your previous information. What will happen is, then the hospital 4 will say that, hey, I want to get the information from hospital 1. Then the hospital 4 will reach out to the consent manager, okay, and then say that, hey, for this health idea, I would like to get this information, health information. Then on real-time basis, the consent manager will send a access request to users. Okay, it could be an OTP. So the OTP, the OTP will go back to user. If the user gives the OTP to the hospital 4, and then the hospital 4 enters the OTP, the consent manager validates that OTP and then fetches the information from hospital 1. Okay, so that's the way the whole architecture. So imagine now it's going to be digitized, and it is also going to create a consent manager and a gateway concept where the exchange of information is well controlled based on the user consent. Okay, social innovation opportunities in healthcare. Now, when you look at UPI, they define a simple interface this third-party application provider interface came and so much disruption happened. Similarly, when you digitize so much, the moment you, like in a UPI, there are multiple health ID, like UPI ID providers. Similarly, multiple health ID providers may happen. Health facility verifiers may come back. There can be multiple consent manager. There could be multiple consent health locker. Sorry, only the health lockers, which can create in the cloud and provide a value-added service, saying that some companies may say that I'll provide a health locker facility as a value-added service free of cost. Like Jio is trying to bundle various OTT apps as part of their GeoFiber connection. So this is another value addition any company can offer. Okay, there can be a lot of patient-centric solutions like self-health management, clinical decision support. This is another example of like gamification. Let's say if your prescription is digitized, okay, the prescription says that you need to take a medicine for 2 days, for 30 days. And then the pharmacy company may send a message saying that have you taken a medicine? Let's see if the end user says that I have taken a medicine, they may offer a discount for next month. So that's basically gamification. What also can happen is, because of so much data, the anonymized data marketplace can open and a lot of analytic solutions can be launched. So the conclusion, what I'm trying to say is that only open source will not enable social innovation. Open platform, open API, and data privacy policies must to accelerate social innovation. NDHM, basically, with an open platform and API approach, will radically change health delivery landscape, will also enable new business opportunities for everyone. Okay, so that's the conclusion. Any questions?
You mentioned about government initiatives in your talk, right? So yeah. One of our audiences wants to know how can we use open source and contribute to government initiatives on a larger scale?
Sure. For example, if you look at NDHM, okay, there's something called Project ECA. Okay, it's open source. Okay, there's a consent manager and gateway is completely open source. Okay, so people who are interested, they can go and contribute it. That's one example. Okay, the other example is Diksha. Okay, is an open source platform. If there again enhancements are happening, if you are interested, go back and contribute it. Digit is another open source project. Okay, go back and contribute it. So the point is that there are multiple open source projects there, which can, whenever this, for example, government launched this, Diksha was launched. Okay, the Ministry of Department of Education launched it. They clearly said that it is powered by open source technology called Sunbird. Okay, so there are opportunities are there. You can go and contribute it. And if you even, for example, if you cannot contribute to open source, you can always contribute back to open platform and architecture. For example, National Digital Health Mission, they publish a blueprint and kept it to citizens for feedback. So if you have a platform thinking, you can go back to the blueprint, you can understand it, and then you can contribute and give a recommendation and suggestions to the government. So typically, anything what happens in the government, as a practice, they open it for public feedback for 30 days.
Mr. Kulkarni, you also mentioned about UPI payments and open source in between. So Ravi Chandran wants to know, would they be charging UPI payments in coming days for such products as well?
No, I think UPI payments are zero. I think, no, which products? I mean, UPI, there is no financial charges for sender and receiver. Okay. The governments want to encourage cashless because of that. The apps, see, for example, there's an app called Cred. Okay. If you pay the bills through credit card, they give you cashback money. Okay. I mean, you may think that what is the business model of them? They are thinking, if I'm able to analyze your credit card statements, they may recommend you some kind of other, based on your spending habits, they may recommend you best deals. And when you go onto that deal, they are pushed, basically they are enabling with that data, they are increasing the traffic to their partners or merchants, and through that they make money. So when you leave it to the social innovation, the price will keep coming down and there will not be any charges. Instead of that, more value creations will happen based on the data.
Perfect. So next question is, if an entrepreneur wants to go ahead and start around building, social experiments using open source, what would you suggest?
I would ask them to suggest, first understand, like for example, today I explained, along with open source, open platform thinking, open design approach, and data privacy. Okay, so you need to always visualize the Focus on the core problem, and then the innovation will happen. So that's the crux of the problem. You need to have a platform thinking. You need to start unbundling the problem. What do you want to solve? And what is the value addition? And how do you make sure that more players can solve different problems based on the problem what you're trying to solve?